Welcome to nextScan's presentation for the ARMA Virtual InfoCon 2020 conference. My name is Doreen Breisch. I'm the Director of Sales for nextScan, and with me today as my co-presenter is Roger Noel, the Western Regional Sales Manager for nextScan. Roger has over 15 years experience with nextScan in the micrographics conversion industry, and we are pleased to present to you today Microfilm Conversion A to Z, planning a successful in-house microfilm to digital conversion project. We wanted to start out today with a brief company overview of nextScan. nextScan is a global leader in cutting-edge technology for micrographic conversion. Incorporated in 2002, the company was established to give microfiche conversion a really high-performance alternative to existing technologies at the time. And the legacy of innovations has revolutionized the industry by the way of having vast technological advances in the conversion market. And just to highlight a few industry first innovations that nextScan is very proud to bring to the micrographics conversion market. In 2002, there was a kind of a time where a lot of companies were starting to think about conversion and looking at ways to cut down on their operator time and their expenses, and looking at faster speeds for the scanners. And so at that time, nextScan deployed the first high-speed microfilm scanner. In 2005, they introduced ribbon scanning to the industry, which is still a hallmark utilized in the industry today. Ribbon scanning is a technology that captures all of the imagery on a roll of film from the very top of the film to the bottom of the film, so that no images are missed. LumenTech lighting is a nextScan exclusive technology, which sets the bar for image quality, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. In 2011, Nexstar Plus it was introduced at a high level to pioneer efficiency in workflow software. And then as we go along, we've added more features to our suite of software offerings that really help our end users to have good efficiency within their conversion jobs and to reduce their labor costs, and with the ultimate goal of having very good quality workable images that are digital and that are protected for a long time to come. A lot of organizations out there are struggling with, why do they want to convert their microfilm collection, and is doing it in-house a good option? So we wanted to explore some of the things that we've heard from our clients and prospects in the industry that are really good things to ask yourselves as an organization when you're looking at converting your microfilm collection, kind of a good checklist, if you will. So the first one that we hear from a lot of folks is, what kind of a budget do we need to establish for converting our microfilm or microfiche, and how can we afford it, and what do we need to consider to put a budget together? With our company, because we manufacture a lot of different products within the microfilm and microfiche scanning industry, we try to offer a solution that will address all levels of different budgets. Everything from a large conversion project where they may scan it in-house. In large conversion projects, a lot of companies choose to utilize their own staff to reduce their outsourced labor, and they can also scan on demand on their time and fit it within the schedule of their current employees. A smaller conversion project, many times we will see organizations that opt to rent or lease equipment, and they can still have that advantage of having that in-house conversion, but they can return the equipment once their collection of film is scanned, and that gives them a lot of opportunity to just go ahead and get it done and then return the equipment. Another consideration that companies battle when they are considering whether or not a conversion is a good idea is what are they currently doing as far as physical storage for their microfilm and microfiche collection. Is it off-site storage that they're paying a lot of money for, and is it harder to access their collection? Sometimes we see that, and they want to streamline those processes. Do they have on-site storage that takes up a lot of space, or possibly is not the best environment for the long-term preservation of their collection? So organizations will want to examine their storage footprint. In microfilm, large archives can take up a lot of space, and getting the collection digitized will help to reduce the cost of space when your collection is digital, and it also will properly preserve those records for a long time. We see people who have disasters in their storage area, and that can be a big deal if that is their legacy copy of records. Also, film will go through some types of degradation over time. And the way to manage that risk is to go ahead and do the conversion of those important records. We see things from our clients in the field, such as vinegar syndrome. If you look at your microfilm and you go down to wherever it's stored and you smell a strong acidic vinegar odor, then that means that some of your film may have vinegar syndrome, with moisture that clicks in to that, and also can cause physical damage to the film, and you're going to want to get that converted pretty quickly. Another thing to consider when you're planning a conversion is what is your current workflow, and what is the retrieval time and process that you currently utilize when you need to access those records, and how does that affect your overall business needs? With microfilm, of course, we have it's an instant record retrieval. You can get your accessibility and your operational efficiency for quick retrieval of the images that your patrons need. And you're going to want to look at what microfilm document do you have that you need to pull up? How are you locating it in your archive? Typical current on-demand retrievals will have someone going to get the microfilm out of their storage area, locating the microfilm, mounting it on a reader printer, which may actually be a very old machine that is at risk of breaking down. And then after you find those images, putting that film back in its correct location. Sometimes if someone misplaces that microfilm, it's really hard to find again, and you're always at risk to a film being damaged each time it's retrieved and processed. So with microfilm scanning and with planning a conversion process, we like to say that it's always a good idea to begin with the end in mind as you are looking at putting together a conversion plan. So first of all, what is the goal of your organization for your conversion process? What data that you have is business critical? And if it's business critical or legally binding that you're providing it in a certain time frame, how are you doing that now, and how will converting it permanently help your business case? Do you have high volume or low volume retrieval? Are you wanting to OCR the film for ease of retrieval? And also, do you have an existing image archive that you're going to want to import those images into? Those are all things that you're going to want to look at and talk to your scanning conversion company about. So Roger's going to talk a little bit about the source material. And this is really critical when we look at microfilm conversion. Some end users aren't really familiar with what they have in their archives. So he's going to go through and talk to you step by step and show you some of the different types of microfilm and microfiche media and what that means to you and your conversion. So I'm going to turn this over to Roger at this time.
Thank you, Doreen. So knowing what you have is really important to a conversion project, whether you are doing it in-house or are having a conversion bureau do it for you. It's critical if you're doing it in-house because what you have will determine the scope of your project in terms of time, in terms of labor, and consequently cost. And it would also drive the selection of equipment that you would make. And we'll talk about selecting equipment a little bit later in this presentation. But even when you are not primarily responsible for doing the conversion, your plan may simply be to outsource. Even then, it's critical for you to know what you have because that would determine how you solicit bids and what kind of detail you include in that solicitation, and how accurate the bids are would depend on how much detail you can provide when you publish it. So that's absolutely critical. And knowing what you have sort of falls into two categories. It's identifying the different media types, and it's also knowing roughly how much of each media type you have. And the reason why that's critical is because just on microfilm, for example, 16 millimeter film and 35 millimeter film are scanned under different conditions because they were likely filmed under different conditions. The reduction ratio, how much the image was reduced to fit on that piece of film, is a key determinant of how it will be scanned because we always want to magnify that image by the same amount. So saying I have 1,000 rolls, some are 16 and some are 35, is not sufficient to get an accurate estimate of how long it will take you to scan it or how long it would take somebody else to scan it, because the 16 millimeter rolls would likely be scanned at a completely different magnification versus the 35 millimeter rolls, and that results in a difference in time, which ultimately results in a difference in cost. And if you're doing it in-house, you want to know what those time factors are. You want to know what the resulting cost would be. And if you're expecting a service bureau to give you an accurate bid, they would also want to know that kind of detail. So knowing what you have and distinguishing everything within each category of media is super important. And not pictured here, but also a format for microfilm is a 1,000-foot, what we commonly refer to as pancakes. So if your film is residing on pancakes that are, 10 rolls put together, that's also important information to convey and identify. Similarly, on 35 millimeter film, a simplex format is very common, as shown, where you have a single image in a frame from top to bottom. But duplex is very common on 16 millimeter film. And again, that's a determinant of magnification because we want to mirror the reduction ratio that it was filmed at. And as you can imagine, if you look at the pictures here, you would be shrinking things a lot more in that duplex format than you would in the simplex format. And consequently, when you scan it, you would have to magnify it more. So knowing the type, whether it's 16 or 35, knowing the format, whether it's simplex or duplex, and even being able to tell what the length of the roll is, because we do have difference in lengths. The industry standard is 100 feet, but there are rolls that go up to 215 feet. And again, these are determinants for how long things will take. And time always equals money, both for you if you're doing it internally or for a service bureau if they are having to do it for you. And when you avoid surprises with the material, you avoid surprises in cost, because it will be twice as expensive to scan duplex versus simplex, or twice as expensive to scan a 250 feet roll versus 100. So those things are super critical to identify with your microfilm. With microfiche, there are similar considerations. The key determinant with microfiche is the number of rows. And with the common jackets, 5 rows with a title bar is prevalent. And there are cut fiche where the 7-row layout, as the one shown in the picture here, is sort of the norm. Those can almost be sort of, considered as a group, and you can base estimates for how long it will take based on an average of 7 rows, even if there might be some 5 rows in there. But if you're looking at something like the one at the bottom, which is a COM, where the number of rows can double to 14, 15, then again, you're looking at a situation where your time's going to double, your labor is likely to double. So being able to identify the type, whether it's a jacket, fiche, comfiche, and clearly identifying the number of rows, average number of rows, that's super critical for your own internal estimation, or again, if you were choosing to outsource for your vendor to give you accurate pricing, it makes a drastic difference. So the microfilm, microfiche, and then aperture cards can also be in the mix. And the format with aperture cards tend to be a little bit more consistent, where you have some identifying information printed on the card. We treat these as essentially the same as a title bar on a fiche. And then you have a single image. That is the most common format. However, there are cases where it may be more than one image in that window. And that's important for you to know. It's important for your vendor to know whether you want those images to be separated or whether you're okay with capturing 3 or 4 images as one in a single window. So identifying that you have aperture cards, but also highlighting how many images are in the card would be important, because all those things drive how long things will take. So that sort of covers the major types in terms of media, but there's also a consideration of whether or not the material you have are, original masters or duplicates. And whereas the physical characteristics in terms of the format and the length and so on drive how long things will take, knowing what you have in terms of duplicates or masters more drives the question of quality. Whenever it's possible to do your digitization from a master, that's always recommended because you will get much better quality using a master than a dupe. And in a case where you have one, you're basically going after with the approach that this is my one chance to get the best archival copy possible, it often is worth the extra expense to bring your masters from cold storage, if that's where they are, and be working from the best available copy rather than working from a duplicate that might be readily available and cheaper to access. That extra cost of getting your masters up front will pay for itself in terms of usability of the material that you digitize, because you'll be working from much better quality. There's a lot less cleanup, and 5-10 years down the road, when somebody needs that document, they'll be spending less time trying to fine tune that if they're starting off with a good quality copy. So that's also a really important thing to know. And as I alluded to earlier, format dictates reduction ratio. Reduction ratio dictates magnification as we scan, and magnification dictates how long things will take. So if at all possible, in some cases, people may not have recorded reduction ratios on the actual film, but if you still have what we refer to as tribal knowledge, and the people who actually did the filming are still in the organization, it's a good idea to leverage those resources to find out as much as possible how the film was created, what common reduction ratios were used. So when you start the project, you can factor that in. And that plays into another aspect of the conversion where it comes to indexing and identifying what is on your film in terms of content, utilizing your subject matter experts for things like determining common reduction ratios and also what information is relevant is super helpful. So that's just a little illustration of that idea. To go to film, we reduce it so many times. So when we go into digital, we magnify it by that many times so that we reproduce the original document. So that leads us into the question of having the right equipment for the job. As you saw, there are different physical media types, and there can be different layout with how the images are organized on those different media types as well, whether it be within the roll film family or microfiche or aperture card. So nextScan, fortunately, has a very wide range of scanners and scanners with varying capabilities that can be used to convert all the microforms that are widely available. And we have an illustration here that shows at the top all the machines we have that are capable of doing microfilm, 16 and 35 millimeter. We also have specialized equipment to do 70 millimeter. That's not pictured there, but we do have that capability. So at the entry level position, we have a flex view that's pictured in the left position on the top row. And in the middle, we have our flagship product, the product that defines nextScan in the marketplace, the clips. These two machines are exclusive for roll film. They only do 1635 millimeter roll film. The FlexScan that's pictured next to them has the capability to do roll film, but you will see the FlexScan showing up in other places because it is a versatile multi-format machine. So if you have a conversion project that's exclusively microfilm, depending on the volume, you may be looking at a flex view on the entry level side, or on the high end, you would be looking at an Eclipse or a FlexScan because they're both capable of doing high volume, high quality. When it comes to microfiche, that is the domain of the FlexScan. It can be equipped with a microfiche module as pictured on the left for doing one fiche at a time. And it can also be equipped with an automatic feeder so that you can do batches of 50, 60, depending on the fiche type. So the FlexScan brings to the microfiche scanning arena all the capabilities that you have for microfilm. And if you had a collection that was exclusively microfiche, or you had a collection that was a mix of microfilm and microfiche, the FlexScan would clearly be the machine of choice because it can support both of these formats. In addition to that, with aperture cards, the FlexScan again is our machine that we would recommend with that, either for manual feeding one card at a time or for doing batches where you can utilize the automatic feeder. Automatic feeder and the fiche module works equally well for aperture cards as it does for the different microfiche formats. And with that selection across our line of equipment, we utilize very high quality optics, very high quality cameras on all the equipment. So when you go from one scanner to the next, depending on your media type, you can have uniform quality across the digital collection. So you wouldn't be compromising your quality on aperture cards relative to microfilm by going from an Eclipse to a FlexScan, because we use common, to the extent possible, common optics and the same cameras on all the equipment. Scan speed, that factors into the question that we ask up front about what you have and how much of it you have. So we have scanners that range in speed from 150 pages per minute all the way up to 2,000 pages per minute. And that range is available because you may have 1,000 rolls of film that you have a year to scan, or you may be in a situation where you're facing legal discovery or some other urgent need, and you now need to scan those 1,000 rolls of film in a week. Regardless of your situation, a year or a week, we likely have a scanner that will be a good fit for you. And in addition to having a range in terms of models, we have varying speeds within each model range, so we can always tailor a scanner to meet the volume and any time constraints that you have to complete that volume. We also have a common software platform across all of the machines. So even if we have a FlexView, an Eclipse, and a FlexScan, and they're doing 1635 millimeter roll film, fiche, comfiche, jackets, aperture cards, regardless of the machine you're on, regardless of the media type you're dealing with, these scanners all utilize the same software. And that has a lot of benefit for a large conversion where you're working with multiple media types. It really cuts down on the training, and it really increases operator efficiency because they're utilizing common tools regardless of the media type that they're working with. And underpinning the software, the other common theme is the ribbon format that we utilize with everything. And it gives you the capability to make faithful digital capture on everything, leverage the blackout and the image adjustment features for all the media types, regardless of what you're scanning. We have that ribbon that gives you all the benefits of having a digital copy to manipulate for your post-processing. So I will turn it back over to Doreen, who would talk to you more about the planning of the project.
Thank you, Roger, and thank you for your great explanations on the different types of microfilm and microfiche that our clients may experience out in the field. So as you look at the types of microfilm that you have, the budget for your project and your goals, there are a few things that you're also going to want to look at when you're planning your project that are informational pieces that you're going to want to gather. Many of these things our company can help guide you. So as we talk about what kind of film you have and reduction ratio and so on and so forth, we do assist with the conversion planning if you so desire to get our assistance. One of the things that a customer or an end user such as one of your companies will want to determine is what DPI you are going to want to have your film or fiche scanned at. And a lot of this depends on your original source film, what type of quality it is. It depends on your retrieval rates, how often the film is going to need to be retrieved, and how critical it is for the end user to be able to have the highest quality image possible. So the industry standard typically is 300 DPI. That's fairly common for a normal conversion. You may see 200 DPI for someone who has a lot of film and they don't have a lot of high need for that retrieval. And then the 400 plus DPI is typically when you're looking at archive level quality. It'll give you pretty large files, so that's something to consider when you're looking at assigning that. A storage space is a big deal. However, as technology advances daily, it's getting easier and easier and much less expensive for companies to have good, reliable storage options for their digital images. And so once we know at nextScan if we are helping you design a conversion plan, if we know a little bit about the resolution that you're scanning at and what type of film you have, we can help you calculate what storage would be needed for your collection. And then you can look at how you want to store that, whether you host it yourself on your own servers, whether you store it on nextScan custom servers that we build and market with our and sell with our scanners for efficiency, or whether you choose a cloud storage provider. Roger briefly mentioned this, and this is something that we can also go through in detail with any interested parties. And we do customized web-based demonstrations of our scanners and software for any of you who want to just understand a little bit more about the capabilities. But one of the things that your company will need to understand as you are planning your conversion process and putting together a plan is, how do you want to index the film? What are you currently doing for your on-demand needs? And do you want to mimic that, or is there more in-depth indexing and retrieval processes that you want to deploy? And what are you going to do for QA? Do you need to verify every single image, or can you just make sure that you have a fairly good representation of the film and do it randomized? Also, very critical, and Roger touched on this, what's your time frame? Do you have a year or 2 years to do your conversion at your leisure? Are you under a specific deadline because of legal considerations or other considerations within your organization, or possibly damaged film? So those are big things to consider as you are planning it. And also that will help you calculate the labor requirements and also your equipment needs for your project. And then, of course, how are you going to retrieve your data once it's converted? This will depend a little bit on your archive and what type of format, what folder structure you want to have. And these are also things that we can offer consultation on, depending on what your long-term goals are. And our scanners can output and move your images over to a long list of common document management systems. We just listed a couple on here, but there are a huge list that we can work with. And also, our Nexstar software offers a part of our software suite process that helps you track your production. It will really act as kind of a project planner for you, and it gives you good milestones throughout your project and evaluates your labor and how long things are taking, and if there are any hiccups or opportunities for improvement in your conversion process. It will really give you a good supervisory look at how things are going within the production. Some common challenges that you might see. Sometimes, when you go down to that storage room where all your microfilm and microfiche is, you might find some things that were unexpected. Sometimes folks will understand that they do have some poor quality film that they're having to deal with. And so that takes a little bit longer in the processing time to get the image quality that is desired. Sometimes they won't have a good estimation of how much film you have, or will need to really look at, is it the type of film that someone thought that you had? And what is the actual reduction ratio, and what's the recommended DPI that you should scan the film at? So those are all things that you'll look at when you're getting your film ready. And here again, those are things that our company can assist with if you so desire. And then sometimes you may need to change your deadline as to when you're going to have your project done, depending on that. And then also, sometimes when you're doing your scanning, you may have somebody who's really up to knowledge and speed on the processes, and then maybe they leave your organization for some reason, and that's why our company, offers ongoing training for that, to fill that need. So we hope that you've got a little insight today on how to go about looking at planning for a conversion project, kind of the A to Z things to consider. Roger and I are available, obviously, for questions. We have put our emails and our main phone line number here on the presentation, and would be happy to talk to you about your microfilm or microfiche libraries, and what your long-term goals are, what your challenges are, what your individual questions are. And of course, if you're interested in demonstrations of the equipment, we're always happy to show off our equipment. We do quite a few web demos, so happy to do that too. Any last thoughts, Roger?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the key thing to take away from this is, even if you don't remember or have at your fingertips all the things to consider in planning the project, knowing that we are available and we are always happy to assist with that process. We would provide consultation and be a sounding board and help you with that plan as well, would be the key takeaway.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. And we want to thank you for your time today, and thank you for listening to our presentation. And we just wish you all a safe and healthy rest of 2020. So thank you so much from nextScan.
Thank you.